Well, this is Monday afternoon, and for once, we're right on time. Unfortunately, Pat, on the other hand, is not at the top of his game today. Or maybe you are, Pat. You're suffering from a severe cold, I think.
I've got a cold. I'm told, like I've done a couple of tests, and I'm told it's not COVID, but there's a doctor on. He says if you've got a respiratory tract infection of any kind, it's probably you've got COVID. But I've done 2 tests and they're both negative, so I presume it's just an ordinary run-of-the-mill cold.
Oh, thanks be to God for that. Well, they say you would know if you'd got COVID. We were down in Dublin yesterday at a commemorative mass for my wife's sister, and they were saying that one of the relatives had got COVID, and her 2 kids both got COVID, and they said it was no joke even at this stage. You know, they talk about these viruses being slightly less or rather less aggressive. They said it was bloody awful, you know. So there you go, Pat. Danger everywhere. Okay, let's settle down to our in your not ill state, but your delicate state. Let's keep it fairly short. Okay. So I think we should start with a local story that I spotted. You may remember way back, I don't know, was it last year or was it, I think it was last year maybe, that Kit Hoy and Jim Allister and a bunch of people took a case to the High Court against the protocol, claiming that it breached the Act of Union 1801.
Yeah, 800,
because it was differentiating between this part of
wasn't a Conservative MP, what do you call him, Ben Habib, involved in that as well?
Aye, that's right. Well, he's not a Conservative, he's a UKIPper.
Was he a UKIPper? I thought he was a
UKIPper. He was a UKIPper MEP. Remember the UKIPs had a lot of MEP people elected at one stage. That's what it was. So the 3 of them went to the Court of Appeal today, which is pretty big stuff, you know, and it must have cost about 2, but maybe Jim did the talking for them. I got it on the cheap. But anyway, the Court of Appeal had one look at it and said, no. And the Chief Justice, Dame Siobhan Keegan, you know, these people, they're everywhere. Dame Siobhan Keegan. This case, she said, this case is very far from one where a court would even begin to contemplate whether it could intervene as the appellants suggest. So, in other words, they were saying, this is ridiculous. You shouldn't have even bothered bringing this because we couldn't even begin to think about it. So, whatever route they're going to take to solve the protocol, it's not going to be a legal route. It looks as
Jude, I'm not totally up to speed on that one, but I do remember reading somewhere in the back, they said if they were going to seriously take this case, there have been so many breaches of that Act of the Union, to suggest this was a new breach of it would be ridiculous. And the fact that so many people even say the Good Friday Agreement is a sort of breach of the Act of Union, so much for that.
That's right. You know? That's right. Treating it differently from the other parts of the UK.
Yeah,
but I mean, I think maybe the High Court or certainly the Court of Appeal were very clear that when you have the Act of Union and then you have the settled will of Parliament, or something different, that the settled will of Parliament overrides or outweighs the Act of Union. Which is very encouraging.
When you don't have a written constitution, it has to be the settled will.
That's a difficulty, all right. Yeah. Well, I'm presuming that the Act of Union, the British Act of Union, was in writing at least.
I presume it's like right. Okay, to use your own line, if it was written in 1801 or thereabouts, and it's been sort of superseded on numerous occasions since. Why are you reverting to try and bring in something that was written nearly 200 years ago?
Well,
whatever it is.
I think much of this is posturing. I think by this appeal to the Act of Union, it's it's appealing obviously to unionists. In the north here with this election coming up. So I have a notion that they're keen to be seen to be seeking some modification of the protocol. So you can't get much more headline than going to the Court of Appeal or the High Court in London. So I guess they figure that will, show at least they're trying really hard. So they had Kit Hoy, Jim Allister, and I thought it was sort of spoiled the whole thing. There was this guy, Ben Habib, who was a UKIP MEP, a former UKIP MEP. I don't think that'll cut much sympathy with most of the people that the DUP would be hoping would vote for them. Do you think?
No, I don't think so. And funny, I thought somewhere in the back of my head, I thought he was a a conservative, but I've heard him on numerous occasions, and Jude, he's a little Englander more than anything else.
Well, that's what it comes.
No, by the way, with a surname like his, you would think he would, be a bit more sort of tolerant to other people from outside. But
yeah,
he seems to want to roll up the gates and keep everybody out.
That's right. That's right. I would have been forgiven, I think, if I said, "Oh, he must be a minister from Israel or from the Middle East somewhere," but not so. Not so. What I'm wondering is, why have they not, in their campaign against the protocol, why have they not zeroed in on Boris Johnson more firmly? Because after all, he's the man that signed it, and of course they helped him to sign it, but he was the one who brought it about.
Well, I hear David Campbell, the Loyalist Council, whatever it is, on. And he tried to shift the blame onto Dublin. Like, that's a deliberate distraction. The British government signed a deal with the EU. What Dublin did or did not do. If Boris Johnson hadn't signed the deal, there would be no protocol. So why blame Dublin? I thought it was totally dishonest. In other words, they couldn't be seen to be blaming their own government, but let's blame those murky nationalists down in Dublin.
That's right. It's an effort to tick the boxes, all the right boxes, the unionist box, the anti-Dublin box, the active union box, a lot. I think they have gone to Johnson. Of course, what Johnson says is, "Oh, well, we won't put up with this. We won't put up with this." But of course, he hasn't done a thing about it and can't do a thing about it.
Here's the thing. Right now, nobody gives a monkeys, and that's a fact about the protocol has gone way down the list of priorities for the EU and for Britain, way down. They're much more concerned about what's happening in Ukraine and about the new world order that seems to be emerging out there, the price of fuel and all the different things going on. So I think so what does they say? There's growing evidence that the protocol is working for Northern Ireland economically. So I don't see it being a big issue for a lot of Tory ministers.
Pat, would you mind holding on 1 second? I'm going to put this on pause and we'll pick up. It's just have a man doing a painting job and I think he's leaving now and I want to see him. I won't be not be 2 minutes, okay?
Pause.
It probably seemed like a long time for our viewers since I left, but it really wasn't that long. Anyway, we're back and we were talking about the sort of utility. But as I say, of this latest appeal about the protocol, but I think it's got to do with showing that you're made of the right stuff with the election coming up and appealing to a section of unionism. I think they're making a mistake, actually. I think there's more unionists who are, what would you call it, soft on the protocol because, in fact, they know it's good for business. So I think those are the people that should be appealing to, not the hard right, as it were. Okay, let's go from there to another story. You were talking about, Pat, and that was China's role in this Ukraine dispute and what it was going to do or not do.
No, I was listening this morning and I was reading a wee bit this morning, Jude. Apparently, the Americans have gone public, which is unusual, to say to China not to give practical aid to Russia. Russia apparently are looking for armaments, particularly drones, Chinese drones, and the war in Ukraine. And the Americans have sort of said to them, look, don't. Now, the thing, and the Chinese have said what the Americans done is fake news and so on, that they want to play a sort of moderation role or moderator role, and they are hoping to play a role and bring around a cessation and peace. But anyway, the bottom line, Jude, a couple of months back, even about a month back, Putin and the Chinese prime minister, president, signed a big deal and so on. And it looked like China and Russia were big buddies. But it's got very complicated. It looks like Russia and China are on one side and the EU and the Americans on the other. But you sort of go, where's all this going, Jude? Are we now going to see a new world order emerge out of this? Now, the Chinese they're the biggest importers of oil in the world, or of fuel. So, Jude, you sort of go, like, when this is all over, like, it would take a much more intelligent person than I am to figure out where all this is going. But when I sit down and watch it, I'm going, Jesus, this is serious stuff. What's happening?
It's a bit unnerving. It's a bit unnerving because we all know the power that China is, and that it's the one economy that's growing and it's got vast numbers of people and so on. But I would say, first of all, that the US and the UK, for that matter, are on dodgy ground warning China not to supply arms. Sure, they're quite openly saying they're supplying arms to the Ukraine.
But they're saying they're supplying it to the victims, not the.
Well, no, it's two opposing sides. I know, I agree with you. I agree, and I mean, I think it's a good thing. But it does seem to be a bit rich for Joe Biden or somebody to say, "Don't you even think about supplying arms?" Meanwhile, look at us shoveling all these warplanes, etc. into. I mean, it must have better grounds for it than that. The other thing is, I don't think China will come. Whenever the Russians were in Afghanistan, the Chinese didn't come to their rescue then. I mean, I'm sure they were sympathetic to them and may even have supplied some weaponry in the background, but they definitely didn't go in and do a rescue act for them. So I would say history would suggest that they'll not become active players. I suppose to see China and Russia on the one side shouldn't be too surprising. I mean, they're both commies.
Yeah, but the odd thing is, Russia, while it's huge militarily, Russia's economy is not. I think it's even behind Britain's, despite the fact that what if it's 17 time zones in Russia? There's only I think it's the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. It's not that huge. Like it's the Chinese economy would be. But what I was thinking about, Jude, was the sort of alignment. Now the thing about it, from what I can read or what I've understand of what I've read, is the Chinese really, they don't want a trade war and they don't want recession in the West. They need the West to export all their goods. And in recent years, China has come up socially and economically big time, and that for their politics, it's very good. The last thing they want is a recession in the West, not being able to sell goods, and that creates so they will probably try and be more constructive. But it's interesting the fact, Jude, that there does seem to be that there's almost like the tectonic plates of geopolitics are moving. Are one group on one side, like the Chinese. That would be really serious if there was a real close alignment between China and
certainly if they became active. But I mean, I assumed that the Chinese would be on the Russian side. I didn't. I mean, I'm hoping against hope that they won't get actively involved. The only comparable situation we have in recent years was Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, the Chinese let the Russians stay there and didn't do anything themselves. I think actually Russia's made, two things about Russia. One is Russia. We tend to think of Russia as being the USSR still, which really was a force to be reckoned with, and it's not. It's not. It is a fading power actually, whereas China is a rising power. So I don't know. We should be too surprised that the Russians are finding it a bit harder to do than they thought they would. On the other hand, I don't think we should get too carried away. I think the West has talked up the resistance of the Ukrainians just a wee bit, because I would be pretty confident. Well, I don't like to use the word confident, would suggest I want it to happen. I don't want it to happen, but I would expect that the Russians will make their way in and take Kiev inside the next 3 or 4 weeks.
They could get down in Ukraine in a way like there's 42 million Ukrainians. And there's a guy on this morning on RT, Claire Burns show, and he said he was an army guy, and he said from what he can see they're extremely well armed. And he said a lot of them had sort of anti-tank weapons strapped to their backs and so on. So see, when it comes to street fighting, okay, they can probably take over the macro end of it, the infrastructure. But see, when it starts to come down, like a Northern Ireland situation, by God, the Russian troops could find themselves getting picked off very handily.
That's exactly it. I agree completely there. In Afghanistan, as I understand it, the war in Afghanistan, either with the Yanks or with the Russians, didn't involve the sort of conventional warfare of guys defending a part and, artillery being fired at them and, see who was able to conquer that patch of ground. The Afghanistan fighters operated essentially as a guerrilla army, as I understood it. I would expect, I would see that as being the great weakness for Russia. I don't think they'll have that much bother actually getting in and taking Kiev and the other cities. But I think if they're, what are they going to do then? It's like a dog chasing a bus. What do you do when you get it? If I could well believe from what you can hear from people that the Ukrainians will mount a guerrilla war. and that'll go on, and it'll be a bleeding sore. And I'd say
Yeah.
they'd be sending home more body bags to Russia than ever was sent to Britain during the troubles here.
Apparently, Jude, this is a side issue to digress. Apparently, two of Putin's senior advisors are under house arrest. Apparently, they had sort of given intelligence that the invasion would go so much better. But you see, the problem with Putin, he surrounds himself with yes men. They're all scared shitless of him, and I presume they didn't want to give him the bad news.
Yeah.
And anyway, apparently they're now sort of bogged down. Jude, apparently the original estimation was that after 4 days they would have all the key infrastructure under some sort of control. Jude, after what is it, 14, 16 days now, they're still not under control.
Well,
And
I don't know.
there's a lot more resistance than they thought.
Yeah, I think they have got more resistance than they thought. But I mean, I get a bit suspicious of this 4 days. I don't remember ever hearing that 4 days until now. So you see, if you say 4 days and now we're in the 19th day or 18th day or whatever, it looks like they really screwed up. I doubt very much if the Russian says, we're going to take 4 days to conquer Ukraine.
Some objectives to reach after. I think they had some, Jude, I'm maybe exaggerating here, but they had some key objectives to reach by day 4. I think that was it.
Oh, really?
Some key, but apparently they haven't reached any of them.
Well, they certainly haven't, but they will. I would be very surprised if we're talking alive, and if you survive that cold for the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I would suggest that we'll be hearing that they have actually taken the cities. But that'll only be the beginning of it, not the end. That'll be the beginning of it. Exactly. I used to be a lot of Ukrainians, that I taught in Canada, in Winnipeg's full of them. Any number of Ukrainians. Or Ukrainian background. Very often their parents would be Ukrainian, and they'd have sort of broken English while the kids were totally Canadian.
Remember the girl who was married to Robert Wagner's very good-looking girl, Lana Wood or something. I can't remember her name. Yeah. Her real name was. She was from Ukraine as well. Stunningly good-looking girl. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, if we get 10,000 of 10,000 come into the south, and then somebody said could be up to 100,000. Micheál Martin was being sort of not hauled over the coals, but he was being questioned on BBC Sunday Politics, I think it's called. And he was saying, we are in line with the EU on this reception of these poor people. We're not looking at the question of security, which was the concern Britain had. You had to check all these guys in case you had somebody coming in that would really provide a security risk. But Micheál pointed out a good point. He said that about 3/4 of them are going to relatives who are already settled in Ireland. So I mean that's pretty good. Sort of, I don't know. It doesn't guarantee, but you have the feeling that they are genuine refugees and not infiltrators.
There's a very odd thing. There's a guy on last week on Radio RT. The catering industry down in Kerry somewhere. Yeah. And they can't get staff for any of the hotels. They can't get staff for the pubs. They can't get staff and all the rest of it. I'm not. If you're a highly qualified Ukrainian, but there at the minute, a lot of people coming in could actually find employment because they're around here too. They're having problems getting people for various things. So at least there'll be some money for them and certain jobs. Now, how long that lasts, of course, is ephemeral, like how long's a piece of string. But right now, the economy, there's work there for them.
Oh yeah, and in fact, there was quite a number, if I remember rightly. Anytime I went to an hotel over the last 5-10 years, usually the receptionist would speak with what sounded to me like
we were in a hotel quite recently, and just about every second person. Well, but I guess we're not native Irish. That's the best way of putting it.
I think it's a really interesting one. We could go on about that, but maybe we will not. This. Are you glad that they're there or not? There's a part of me that is a wee bit dismayed because you go down to Kerry. You kind of expect a Kerry accent to the guy that that fills in your details. At the same time, we should be grateful. I always think Ireland should be grateful getting immigrants because they really enrich life here. They really do.
I agree.
And you see it with kids. You see kids who are black brown, God knows what colour, and they're speaking with Dublin accents or Kerry accents or playing Gaelic football or whatever, just marvellous. Okay, let's move on to a death which touched your heart, Pat. And that was the death of Pete St. John.
You know the thing about it. Like, I am no expert. You're the culture guy here. Pete St. John died on Saturday, and his songs have gone all over the world, and yet they're sung at Parkhead or Celtic Park. They're sung Liverpool. To come up as well. Numerous orchestras have recorded them, and you wonder. He was sort of like a troubadour, the fields of Athenry, Dublin in the rare old times. What here, my question was, why did his songs strike a chord in a way that very few others did?
Actually, I remember the first time I heard the fields of Athenry, and it was about 2 years after we came back, so about the early 80s. And I was at a conference, and there was a guy who was playing the piano, and this teacher who was at it, a young woman, sang it. And I remember thinking, oh, flip me, that's beautiful. That's really lovely. And I assumed, I was certain, I didn't even think about it. I assumed because of the words, because of the air, that it was from the 19th century, say sometime between 1850 and 1900. Not so. It was old Pete St. John doing his thing. The same thing, if you think about it, applies to Dublin in the rare old times. It's going back, looking back. And again, I thought that was one that was, on the go since the early 30s, maybe, let alone the 80s. They're both, I describe them as kind of retro music, aren't they? Like, they make you feel the past very, very vividly. And in the fields of Athenry, it's a funny title when you think about it. It's not just saying Athenry, saying the fields of Athenry.
But Athenry, a wee town in Galway, that you passed through.
You wouldn't have heard of before.
Exactly.
And the fields, that was what that famine was all about, the fields. And it makes it a love song as well, with the woman lamenting and the children and bringing in the historical figures into it. So it's a very carefully worded lyrics, and for that reason successful, and it has a very melancholy air. Dublin in the rare old times is, well, Dublin people are very sentimental, and about their city, I think. And they like this, they'll say things to you like, God, things were great then. My mate, my best man, came back, as I think I told you, and tried to settle here and just couldn't, because it wasn't the Dublin he had left 30, 40 years before. It was the old Dublin. But the thing is this, that is, Dublin in the rare times is bathed and soaked in sentiment. If you listen to the words, like it says, ring a roses, and as the light declines, it's all fading and nostalgia. And I thought I would give you the benefit, Pat, of a poem. One of my favorite poems it's by a British, an English poet. Yeah, I'm sure you know him anyway, A. Houseman. It's called The Land of Lost Content. There's only 2 stanzas to it. It says, into my heart an air that kills, from yon far country blows. What are those blue remembered hills? What spires, what farms are those? This is the land of lost content. I see it shining plain. The happy highways where I went and cannot come again. I thought that's very similar sentiment.
That is really beautiful. That is perfect.
Past was beautiful, and it's gone. We can never win back sort of the Garden of Eden again. So what had struck me, the whole thing about Pete St. John was, when she took her off to Birmingham, about the guy with skin as black as coal. When he took her off to Birmingham, he took away my soul. Apparently, someone, because of the woke generation, they wanted to change that, and he refused point blank. I'm not going to that discussion, but what I'm saying is he captured an era, and a time and a place. Yeah, very skillfully, very well. And they both are. They just have all the hallmarks of something that was written years and years earlier, and I think that's part of it.
There was a profundity to them as well. They weren't
There
just
is,
sort of
there is actually, yeah, there is.
Yeah.
That thing about the light declining and the children playing games, and that's something that they don't do anymore. Like we all remember kids playing games in the street, but that doesn't happen now. They're taken in the car for a swimming lesson or a piano lesson.
That's exactly
whatever it may be. Okay, I can see you wilting there, Pat. So I will push on hard to Newcastle. Newcastle.
Yeah.
See the way I said that? Newcastle.
And you lived there, didn't you?
I did for 2 years. 2 years. So I feel I know it. Actually, it was a very interesting 2 years. Some very nice people I met. But anyway, Newcastle, you tell me what you're going to talk about. You're talking about Newcastle.
I was sitting watching Newcastle on Saturday, and Newcastle v Chelsea. I was watching it for a wee while, and then I just looked up on social media and said Saudi Arabia has executed 81 people today, beheaded 81 people, 81 men. And what happens in Saudi Arabia half the time, Jude, is they claim that the people they're executing are terrorists or murderers or beheaders, or whatever. Sorry, whatever, rapists. Basically, what they're beheading half the time their own political opponents under the guise that they're terrorists and all that, that sort of stuff. And there's a term I came across there quite recently called sports washing. The Saudi royal family are involved in this thing. They've taken over Newcastle, and remember Jamal Khashoggi? Remember the American journalist who was killed in the Turkish embassy in Saudi Arabia embassy? And you sort of go, these guys are sort of executing right, left, and center, but there seems to be no moral values anymore in sport. If you can pick up the tab, Chelsea, Abramovich, everybody thought Abramovich was sort of on the fringes. Abramovich was right in there with Putin, absolutely in the inner circle. I didn't realize, I think you mentioned it last week as well, that when Abramovich or when Putin was picking his cabinet, the person who did the interviewing for him for his cabinet the first time round was Roman Abramovich. And the man, he can afford to, he's saying that when he sells Chelsea, he's looking for, what is it, 3 billion. And when it's sold, he will give all the money to charity. Isn't that lovely, Jude? That you're so well off that you can give 3 billion to charity.
Couple of million, Well, you may be sure anybody who's made those massive sums in Russia and is allowed to hold on to them has to be given the sanction of Putin for sure. Well, it's an interesting one. Your immediate reaction when you hear about the 81 beheadings, actually. That's how they were executed, beheadings, and public at that. Beheadings are. I don't
know if they were public now. There were 81 beheadings.
But I'm sure I saw a thing today. It said the custom is to do them in public. In any case, the guys lost their heads. So what does Newcastle do? Do they say keep your money? They could do that, but would that stop the beheadings? No, it wouldn't stop the beheadings. So this thing where you say, well, all right, I know it isn't I'm powerless, but I'll make this gesture. I actually think that, you need to have the British government, like with regard to Russia, it's the world that has swung in behind. The rest of the world virtually has swung in behind isolation, penalties, the lot. And I would say if I was Eddie Howe, who's a manager I like, actually, he looks like a normal sort of a guy. If I was him, I'd be saying, yes, certainly I'll, break all ties with Saudi Arabia, but after you, Boris. In 1975, Pat, in 1975, Thatcher did a deal, an arms deal with Saudi Arabia. It was called the Al-Yamama deal.
Easy for you to say.
And it was, that's easy for me to say. It was an arms deal. And you know what it was worth? 43 billion pounds.
Yeah.
In 2016, the Saudis were in Yemen using cluster bombs. Yeah. And guess where they came from? Britain. So it's clear that, Eddie Howe, the extent to which he's sort of corrupted by being, or contaminated by being in touch with or was funded by Saudi Arabia, pales into insignificance compared to what the British government has done. I heard,
he was asked on Saturday, Jude, as far as I recall, and he says, look, I'm here to talk about football. I'm not getting into the politics, the morals of this, and I suppose, but Jude, you just reminded me of something. As far as I remember, Boris Johnson is off to Saudi Arabia today for another. So in the midst of all this, they execute 81 people in one day. You know, and you know, there seems to be. You sort of go like, what's acceptable? Is there any sort of thing anymore? What does it matter? Should we all just become like sort of the law of the jungle? You know, like William Golding's The Lord of the Flies. The strongest just won, and there's no moral order. Just I know if you want someone, go out and take it. And somebody says, "What's the problem?" Well, like I was able to do it. So what's your problem?
Well, maybe, you know, if you look at the States, it'd be interesting to know how many people were executed. Say you went back 50 years. You know, the idea of capital punishment, you know, people thought it was definitely right. You know, you kill somebody, you deserve to hang. But what gets me is in this case is the hypocrisy. Yeah, hold on a second now. I'll be back in a second, Pat. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. That was a comfort break. So we're back again. We're talking about the Saudi. Executions.
No. What I was, Jude, really the big question. That's the meta question sort of thing. Is there no such thing as a moral order or a moral imperative anymore? If you have got money, does it buy everything? That nothing has got any. Everything's got a price, but nothing's got any value. You know, it doesn't matter.
I think leaders should lead by example.
Yeah.
And a guy called Andrew Smith, I did a bit of digging into Wikipedia, etc. And a guy called Andrew Smith, who is from the Campaign Against Arms Trade, said that Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson, and this is a direct quotation, have played an utterly central and complicit role in arming and supporting the Saudi-led destruction of Yemen.
Yeah.
And Jeremy Hunt's Conservative leadership campaign was funded by one Ken Costa, who is an investment banker with close ties to Saudi Arabia's crown prince. So, you know, if I was Eddie Howe, I would just take the line he's taken. I would tend to say, look, I cannot be expected to right the world. There's terrible things happening, but there's a job of governments to lead us if they're going to say that we should change our ways. And I'm not going to sacrifice.
My point originally isn't it the Premier League have some sort of rule about what a fitting and person to you know, and they're supposed to do due diligence whether these people are acceptable in all the rest of it. And so here they have Newcastle been taken over by a guy who orders the execution of 81 people, who ordered the execution of Jamal Khashoggi and so on. And is he a fit and person to be running a football club in a Western democracy?
But actually, he's not running a club; he's just funding it.
Yeah, but that's
he's just giving them loads of money.
That's like saying, like when Abramovich wanted rid of a manager, you know, like Abramovich, he called the shots.
That's right. That's right. But what he wanted was success. So he put in the money and he says, "Get me a winning team." And if he wasn't getting a winning team, throw that guy out and get another one.
You get another one, yeah.
So it's definitely a funding role that they're playing. I just feel that when you look at it, for example, Pat, I know this is a horrible question, but supposing a guy knocked on your door this afternoon, and he had a brown paper envelope, and then in that was £5 million.
Yeah.
And he said, "I want to give this to you because I've always liked you. You're very good on that Zoom thing with that guy Collins. You're having a hard time with him, I know, but you really make it good. So here's this £5 million. Would you say, have you been involved in any shady dealings? Are you involved in execution of anyone, or would you query that?"
Jude, I'd be ringing him from the Bahamas and saying thank you very much.
But that's exactly it, Pat. I would do exactly the same. I'm sorry, but I would. And I would say, I can't right the world's wrongs. You know, I can't do it. I just have to get by myself.
But Jude, you would hope there's something in place to stop our natural greed and our natural selfish. Jude, there should be laws. Like, here's the thing. To answer your hypothetical question, that person shouldn't be able to give me 5 million. There should be checks and balances where he got it from, how he got it, etc., etc. Now, you know, we can all be sort of with blandishments, we can all do things we really shouldn't. But there's in any civilized society, or any society that wants to have some sort of moral values, like there should be clear, delineations. This is unacceptable, or this is acceptable.
Yeah, and I think if people are in positions of power, there really is something that stinks about the notion that they would be showing a lead by being up to their neck in associating with these people, that they then would maybe turn around and say, oh, this guy's not fit to be funding a club,
Yeah.
Don't do what I say, don't do what I do, do what I say.
Do what I say, yeah.
Not good enough, really, not good enough to be the line I would take in that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's about as far as we can go, isn't
yes.
it?
That's it.
Actually, it'd be interesting if they were to ban all foreign funding of British clubs. I think there'd be a case for the games being more exciting. You mightn't have the same level of skill, but they would be.
But hold on, isn't Barcelona and Real Madrid? There's a lot of fan ownership there. The German model is very, very successful economically and financially, and there's a lot of fan, and their prices are a lot lower than them. So there are alternatives. Yeah,
there are. But of course, it's easier to not bother. But what gets the reek of hypocrisy is the one thing that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And when you do a wee bit of digging, the slightest wee bit of digging, you'll find that they're up to their oxters. Okay. Any jokes, Pat?
No. As I keep telling you, the ones
nothing about sneezing into handkerchiefs or being in a dark room with a flannel towel on your forehead. TLC and all sides. I hope your wife's been nice to you now.
Absolutely.
What more can a man ask?
A hot toddy.
There's a poem about that too. Something about women. I don't know how it ends. I don't know how it goes, but it says essentially women in normal circumstances, they can be terribly trying and they're full of wiles and guiles and so on. But in our hour of need, a ministering angel she is. And there's truth in that too,
Oh, there certainly is. That she's very good.
Okay, Pat. On that happy note for my heart household, we will leave it. Okay, thanks, Pat. Look after yourself.
Bye.